Oh, very well.
Thank you, Marianne. I first met Danny as an incoming freshman at Allentown College over 30 years ago. Danny and my husband Joe were juniors and roommates at the time, and I immediately knew that he was someone special. Not only for the obvious, his good looks, but by the way our fellow students gravitated towards him. I think the main reason was the sincerity and care he showed to others. Those traits, along with a strong faith in God, have remained constant. Even though, as what you will hear, over the years those traits were tested, Danny's positive outlook on life and his willingness to help others always shined bright. That is why I'm not surprised he was able to put his philosophy on life in a recently published book, On Heaven's Front Porch. We are grateful that Danny agreed to speak with us tonight in honor of our 3rd annual literacy campaign kickoff. And it gives me great pleasure to announce our good friend, motivational speaker, renowned author, Danny Vader.
I always failed to mention that I introduced her and Joe. She actually was dancing with me. And I thought, well, this is pretty cool. And then she said, you know that guy over there, right? I've never seen him before in my life. So no, delighted to be here. So thanks. I'm just going to chat for a little bit, maybe about 30 minutes or so, about the book and some of the principles there that we call Jackrabbit. I wrote the book back from Heaven's Front Porch. And there's a great quote in there that's near and dear to my heart. It's by George Bernard Shaw, Irish poet. And he said, life is not about finding yourself. Life is about creating yourself. I had that wrong for a long time in my life. So wrong that when I graduated from Allentown College in 1985 with an accounting degree, where's my accountants in here? I love you people. Love you. Wrong turn for old Danny for you. So I graduated and I got a really good job. I got a job selling medical equipment. I was making about $19,500 or $21,000 or whatever, more than my friends, and they're going, man, this is great. I'm like, I'm rich. And they also gave me a car. I had a white Ford station wagon. 21 years old, college graduate, white Ford station wagon. It didn't necessarily help the whole dating thing. At any rate, as it happens in life, I took that job knowing in my belly that it wasn't a job I should take. If you ever make a decision that everybody tells you, hey, this is a good job, you should take it, it's a good career, and I'm going, ah. So about a year later, I said to my dear mother, who I love, who was here, and my sister Trish, I said, I'm going to leave that job. And she said, you're crazy, you can't leave that job. Now she has 8 children, right, 7 boys and a girl, my mom. And she said, you can't leave, and I said, well, I can. And she said, no, and she gave me a lot of reasons, and she said, well, you can't, you don't have a car. If you leave. So I went out the next day and I bought a Volkswagen for $800. And then I went to Avalon, New Jersey for the summer. I gave my notice and went to Avalon, New Jersey. You can learn from our parents, we learn lessons. Probably less than 5 or 6 months later, that $800 investment was dropped out off at a junkyard for $50. So we're mothers, we should listen to you, yes? So I decided then I wasn't going to go back into those type of jobs or corporate America or whatever. I was going to go find myself. And I went to look in Avalon, New Jersey, at Princeton in the Bongo room. Every now and again I'd bounce over to Sea Isle, to Springfield, one of those places. And then when Avalon got slow, I discovered Aspen, Colorado. And I'm like, so for a couple of years I just kind of vacillated to find myself between those 2 areas. My mom's like, this is crazy, you need to move on. And I said, no, I'm just going to stay right with the A's, Avalon and Aspen. And we'd have phone conversations and she would say, well, Daniel, did you find yourself yet? And I would say, no, Mother, but this is a really nice place to look at here. So I stayed in that kind of finding or looking for yourself for a number of years, and then July 28th, 1992, at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I was with a friend of mine who I worked at, 2 brothers at a roofing company, and we were lowering a ladder. I was leaned against here, I was getting ready to go play golf and skip back with some friends, and as that ladder's coming down, I'm over here and I'm looking up at some wires, and I saw them, and something in my belly said, we're going to hit them, and I looked at him and I said, are we going to hit these, are we okay? He said, no, we did it this way this morning. Some of you read the book, you know the story, we hit the wires. The electricity came down, it went into his body and my body. Killed both of us. I came back. He was 38, he did. Had 3 kids, his daughter was 2 months old. So a good friend of mine, Bruce. So that's the back from heaven's front porch. When my body stopped, right, there was a part of me that didn't. It went on. I had no anxiety at all when the electricity hit me. I was very peaceful. As a matter of fact, I saw what was going on the scene. You probably heard that before. And I looked and I saw Stu, the other brother, coming down the ladder, and I'm yelling to him, "Hey, get Bruce, get Bruce, get Bruce." And then I was just pulled away into a very deep, dark, loving place where I was with God. It's that simple. No light, no tunnel. I didn't see my aunt with purple hair or any of those kind of people in heaven. But I knew I was with God, and it was beautiful. And when I expressed to this God, what about Lisa, who is my wife now, who's my girlfriend, and what about my mom, right, because they always said, you know, Danny's her favorite. My 6 brothers, her, my Danny, you get your special chicken and all that. But when I said to God, you know, what about Lisa and what about my mom, I was right back in my body. Boom, just like Hollywood would do in a movie. Right back into the body. So I crawled over and started to do CPR with Stu and his brother Bruce, you know, who passed. The paramedics came, they cleared us away. I moved down to a fence, and I sat next to the fence, and I thought, man, my feet hurt. And I looked down at my boots, my work boots, and they had holes in them. And then I took them off, and I looked at my white socks, and they had holes with black around them. And then I took them off, and I had holes in my feet. Holes in both sides of both feet, but no blood. So those of you that have read the book, you know why that first line is, why is there no blood? Because that's what I was thinking. So the interesting thing then, Stewie comes over to me and says, "Gee, what the heck?" Now, I won't use the language that we had. But what happened? You know, the paramedics are running around. We don't know if his brother's going to live or not. And I said, you know, I guess we hit the wires. And he said, I heard it. And I said, I know. I saw you coming down the ladder. And I said, didn't you hear me yelling to you? And he said, you never said anything. And I'm like, whoa. What's going on? That's probably God right now. Speed it up, Danny. You got the first part. So anyhow, you can imagine after that, I went kind of into a deep, dark place. And actually, that was in July. In October of that year, I went to North Carolina, the Outer Banks down in Kill Devil's Hills. And I was so depressed. I had so many people that loved me and wanted to help me. You know, but I just wasn't letting them in. I didn't go to church anymore. God doesn't understand. It's not fair, all that kind of stuff. And I went down there with a very strong intention of taking my own life and not coming back to Pennsylvania. You know, I think about 20 years later. I was drinking beer, but I love my beer, but I was drinking then for all the wrong reasons. And I remember one night I was walking back to this little hotel, and I saw a phone booth. So now I'm dating myself, right? They're not around. But I'm telling you, it was like this phone booth was shiny and new, and I'm looking, and you know, I got a half a buzz on, and I'm going, man, that wasn't here a day or two ago when I moved it, when I came into this hotel. So I go over and I call my house real quick, and I get my mom, and she says, you know, Danny, how you doing? And I said, okay. She said, when are you coming home? We can't wait to see you. And in that instant, something clicked in my head. Because I was on this spiral. Something clicked, and I said, you know what? I got to get better. It was the first time from July until October that I had entertained a vision. Right? Vision is just for us the ability to imagine something that's not real. And it is an awesomely powerful principle of practice. You can vision for a year, 2 years. You can vision for a day. So for some reason, that's what clicked for me. So those of you that know the principle, it's called Jackrabbit, J-C-K-R-B-B-T, and there's 5 principles. So in the book, you know, I know some of you have read it, and I appreciate the feedback, and some of you hopefully will read it, you know, maybe give it out as a gift. But the jackrabbit of all the animals in the animal kingdom has really good eyesight, because its eyes sit real far back on its head and very high up, so it can essentially see its whole environment. It has really good awareness. And as soon as I saw that, I thought, that's for me. That's what makes sense for me. It's very important for us to have the awareness in all those areas of our life. So I developed this methodology, and I didn't invent it, it's just what worked for me, because at 28 I said, I got to get better. And I looked around and I said, okay, what principles should I practice that are going to make me happy and fulfilled again? And there was a lady driving with who has teenage daughters, anybody? So there's a story about a woman driving with 3 or 4 teenage girls in the car, and they're talking about high school and all, and one girl looks and she says, I don't know, Mom, our principal is always telling us what to do. And the mom looked back and smiled, and she said, "My dear, your principals are always going to tell you what to do." She's talking about different principles, right? So I distilled it into these 5 principles. And the first one, as you can imagine, is called develop vision. I have found when I watch people who are really happy and really fulfilled is they always have a vision. And sometimes it's for a day, sometimes it's for a week, it's a vision around a meeting. You know, vision is just the ability for us to imagine something in our head that's not real yet. And when we get it, it brings excitement. It can help us deal with some of the BS in life if we have that good, powerful vision. The other side of that principle is to create reality. And in the middle, there's a little arrow. And that arrow is at the center of this whole model, and the arrow stands for action. So if you've ever seen somebody talk a good game, they got a real clear vision, but they're not taking the action to get there? Like me, I talked about writing a book for how long, Trish? 12 years? Joe? You're out playing golf, and Joe's like, "Come on, dude, you got to shut up or you got to write this book." Right? So that action piece is so very, very important. You know, in terms of vision, what was powerful for me is to finally get clear on that I was going to get better. I didn't know how I was going to get better, but I just started to get back in the game. Went to Westchester, took 2 classes for organizational development. Never went back after that, but just got me back in the game. Went to see another psychiatrist. I mean, I went through some psychiatrists back then, let me tell you about that. Let's move through pretty quick. And then also went back to work with Stewie for a little while, which everybody's going, "Oh my gosh, you're going to go back, that's not good." But here's a guy that had, a successful roofing company. His brother's dead, and the other guy that works with him is gone now. So he went from 3 down to 1 and all that trauma. So went back to work. So the key is, a lot of times when we have these difficult things that we go through in life, very, very important to create that vision and then get on the action. Sometimes people think, this is what I found, and you may disagree, but sometimes I think people have to have that path all laid out for them. And I say, no, just get clear on the vision and take 1 or 2 actions. The actions you see is the path. So as we start to take actions, and we go 6 months, a year down the road, we turn around and we go, "Oh, look at where I am versus where I was before." Very powerful concept. I love to watch people who have vision. I study people. So I travel a lot too, right? So 4 years ago, I'm out in Denver, Colorado, and I was doing some work down in Colorado Springs with Progressive Auto Insurance. And you know how the flights come east. The last one is usually around 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So I finished with the group, and I'm going to stay overnight and fly back early the next morning. So it happened to be the Colorado Rockies were in the World Series. I don't know, was it 4 years, maybe 6 years ago or whatever it was. So I went out and I grabbed a pizza in a sports bar, and I'm watching the game a little bit, and I go to sleep and I get up. I got up about 4 o'clock in the morning. Colorado had to drive up to Denver. It was about an hour and a half from Colorado Springs. So I get there. Now I pull into the Thrifty parking lot. Rental car. That's my preferred rental car. Thrifty. When I travel. And it's on the front range of Denver right now. It's October. You got the Rockies. It's dark. It's cold. And I pull in and I get out of the car, and there's this young lady about 20 years of age. She said, "Hey, how are you this morning?" I'm going, "Whoa. I'm doing okay. How are you?" And she said, "I'm doing great. I'm doing great. Here, let me check you in. You fill up with gas?" And she's asking me all these questions, and I'm going, "Yeah." And she says, "All right, well, I'll take care of you. I'll get you checked in. Where you're flying?" I said, "I'm flying to Philadelphia." We're chatting a little bit. She got tremendous energy. About 20 years old. And all of a sudden, as we're talking, she gets a big yawn. And I thought, well, I'll have some fun with this. Right, the World Series game the night before. She's 20 years old, so I stereotyped. And I said, "Oh, you're a little tired. You had a late night?" And she said, "Yeah, I did." And I said, "Yeah, game, something else. You're at your friend's partying?" And she said, "No, actually, I was studying." So once she let me take my foot out of my mouth, I said, "Oh, well, what's that all about?" And she said, "Well, I work here in the morning from like 5 in the morning till 9, and then I go to school, and then at night I have to study, and I stay up late." And I said, "Oh, that's great." I said, where's all this leading? It seems like you really got your act together." And she said, "Oh, I'm going to work in Los Angeles. I'm going to be in the fashion industry." And I said, "Oh." And I said, "Let me ask you a question." She said, "Yeah." I said, "Do you ever see yourself there in Los Angeles, in the fashion industry?" And she looked at me with these big, beautiful, I know her name. Her name is because I asked. Her name is 1 letter of the alphabet. Now, I haven't seen her yet, but when I look in People magazine, you know how they always talk about these new designers around? Trust me, someday I think I'm going to see her. So I said, "Do you see yourself in Los Angeles?" This is 5 o'clock in the morning in a cold, Thrifty parking lot. And she looked at me and she said, "Mister, I see myself there every day." You see, that's the power of vision when we get it. Steve Jobs had it at Apple, right? So develop vision, create reality. How many of you right now are going, I hope he says something? Because this is really awkward. Anybody? Let me see your hands, because it's written all over your face. Oh my God, he forgot what he was going to say. Kelly's like, no, what do I do? Take the microphone back? Here's the next principle of Jackrabbit. Be still. I find that happy and fulfilled people create times of stillness in their day and in their life. And here's what I'll offer to you. The world does not promote stillness. Anybody drive here past all the shopping malls today? Everybody's being real still there, aren't they? The new iPhone 5 came out last month. What was it, last month or so? First 24 hours, 2 million sold. Why are we buying iPhones? So we can create stillness? I saw once the average teenager, where's all my teenage friends back there, Caroline and DJ? Yeah, the average teenager sends 2,300 text messages a month. And some of you now are going, my kid's above average. He's sending way more than that. Right? So think about stillness, right? Stillness. What does it do for us? A couple things real quick, I'll just give you. Stillness helps us process our worldly information. Have you ever had a good idea when you really weren't doing anything? Your mind just slows down. Albert Einstein once said, he said he was amazed at how the monotony of a quiet life stimulated his creative mind. So when I work with executives and do some executive coaching, one of the first things I get them to do is start to create pockets of stillness in the day. Close the door, hide the iPhone, put your head back, and breathe as slow as you possibly can. It will help process the information. It also has good physical effects for us. Anybody meditate, they know that, right? Prayer, monks, chanting, all that. Here's some of the physical effects. Lowers your blood pressure. Anybody want lower blood pressure? Lowers your heart rate. So everybody right now, just put your hands kind of right down on your laps right here. Just down on your laps. Put your feet on the floor. Let your shoulders hang as low as they could possibly go. Stop thinking about Christmas and all the shopping. And close your mouth and just breathe through your nose. Let your butt just sit in that chair like it's going to break right through the chair. Right? And breathe in real deep. And push your stomach out. Don't breathe up clavicular through your shoulders, just through your stomach. Push your stomach out. Breathe really slow. The chemicals going into your bloodstream now are good ones versus the stress chemicals that typically, when boom, iPhone goes off, BlackBerry goes off. Feels pretty good, doesn't it? So most times we think, oh my gosh, I have to meditate, I don't have time for that. Or I have to go to India to the top of the mountain with the holy man and sit there. That's on my list, by the way. I'm going. I just don't have the time and money just yet. I sell a lot of books. I'll be in India. I guarantee you that. But here's the other thing it does. It actually slows down the aging process. I got you now, don't I? Because everybody, you all wake up and say, let's see if I can get really old fast today. Versus slowing down. So the ability to be still is really, really important for us. So we want to develop vision, create reality, be still. The next one is to know thyself. Principle of the Jackrabbit, know thyself. Socrates said it, right? Know thyself, know thy strengths, know thy weaknesses, their spiritual heritage, your aim, your purpose. Happy people know themselves. When I took the job selling medical equipment, I knew myself and I still took it. Right? One of those wrong turns to get on the right road. We've ever been there before? So how do we know our worldly talents? Well, anybody have two as children that are going to watch some of the holiday specials right now? Rudolph and Frosty and all those things. Anybody have those? One of the greatest examples, when we think about our worldly talents, what do we mean? You're good with people. You're good with numbers. You know, the worldly things that we can do. I mean, what's one of the greatest examples in these classic Christmas shows right now around Know Thyself? Whoever gets it gets a free book. What is that?
The elf and the...
It's the elf in Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer. The dentist. Herbie. Does anybody remember? Herbie's an elf. He is not happy. He is not fulfilled. I want to be a dentist. Remember he says that? They all got your elf, make toys. We're behind, I want to be a dentist. I mean, there's a great example. Think about your kids. Harry Truman, the president, said the best advice we can give our children is find out what they want to do and advise them to do it. So as you look at their talents, what do they do well? Right? Extrovert, introvert, all those kind of talents, numbers and those things. There's a great story. There's a guy named Sir Ken Robinson, and anybody that goes out on YouTube, Sir Ken Robinson. He's a creativity expert. He's a British guy. He's a great speaker. He's hilarious. He does a talk around how creativity is being killed in our education system, stifled in our education system. And he tells this story about this woman, and her name is Gillian Lynn. Now, many of us never know. It's the first time I heard about her. But here's the story he tells. She's 8 years old. It's in 1930s, and she's over in England. And the mom gets a call and says, you know what? She's not doing real well in school. She's fidgety. She moves around. She doesn't do her homework. She distracts the other kids. We need to have a talk. Sound familiar to anybody? And you're going, wait, too close to home, dude. So what he goes on to do, Sir Ken Robinson is talking, and he goes on, and he says that they got a specialist, and they brought the mom, and they brought Jillian in, and they go on and talk, and the specialist asks a lot of questions of Jillian and the mom, and he's observing. And he says to young Jillian, he says, Jillian, you know, your mother and I are going to go outside and chat for a moment. Everything's fine. You just stay here. And as he walks out of the office, he turns the radio on. And then he walks out with the mother, and they turn around, and he says, just watch. And she starts moving. And she starts dancing. And he looks at her, and he says, there's nothing wrong with your daughter. She's a dancer. Enroll her in dance school. So, as the story goes, she went into dance school. As soon as she got there, this was the most wonderful place in the world. She's a person that needs to move to think. She goes on to get into the Royal Ballet. She comes out of there. She meets a guy named Andrew Lloyd Webber, and she is very instrumental in the choreography and set design for Cats and Phantom of the Opera. Now, this guy's funny because he said she's lived a wonderful life. She's brought joy to a whole bunch of people, and she's a multimillionaire. Think about now. What do we say? He said, in today's world, somebody would have said she has ADHD. And he said, thankfully for her back then, that was not an available diagnosis in the 1930s. But then just put her on medication. Right? So know thyself. The other thing, too, really, that I would offer to you is just know yourself spiritually. And it's not, Catholic is what I am, and I love it, and it works for me. But, when I went up there, God didn't say, are you Catholic? There's a joke about the guy that goes to heaven. He's walking down, he looks in one room, and there's all these people having meetings, and he's with St. Peter. And St. Peter says, who's that? And he says, that's the Methodists. They're having a meeting. And then they go to the next one, and these people are jamming and clapping and everything and singing, and Baptists. And he goes, yes, Baptist. And they come to the next room, and everybody's real quiet and kind of praying. And St. Peter says, and they walk past, and he says, St. Peter, he says, who is that? And why are we to be so quiet? And St. Peter says, oh, that's the Catholics. They think they're the only ones here. And I heard that from my dear friend and oblate priest sister, so please. Right, so we develop vision, we be still, we seek support, or we know thyself. The next one is to seek support. Right, so do we practice the principle and the fundamental belief of seeking support? Why it came out for me is because I had wonderful people that loved me, and I didn't let them in. They didn't understand what I'm going through. Life's not fair. All that victim mode. All they wanted to do was love me and help me. And I wouldn't let them in. God's wrong, so I'll stop going, I'll show God, I'm not going to go to church. And I struggled, and I went down that spiral where I was looking at hoses to put in my gas tank and in my window so I could just go to sleep. As soon as I opened up and sought support again, everything gets better. See, God can't protect us. He can, but He doesn't choose to. So St. Francis de Sales said, the same loving God that cares for you today will care for you tomorrow and every day. He will either protect you or give you the unfailing strength to bear it. Right, so once we get that, then we just tap in because we know there's bad stuff going to happen to us. It's a really good source of support right there. So that's kind of the external, the people. The other support that we can have for ourselves, what books do we read? What tapes do we listen to? All those kinds of things that can help us out. I'm really humbled by, the book, and Mike Dignan asked me, how many did you sell? And I was at the publisher 2 weeks ago. We did a run out there for some kids, put on a run for a little girl. They lost their little sister, she was 7. And the 2 kin now put on this run to raise money. It's called Sophie's 6. It's a 6K. I just did the 1K. I said, next time I'll do the 6K. At any rate, when we were out there, he said, we were approaching like 2,000 books. And he said, that's pretty good. First time, nobody knows, you don't have any publicity or anything like that. But I'm humbled by the feedback that we're getting from the book, that people like it. People are finding time to be still. I get some people that are going back to church because they read the book. And that's really good stuff. So we're humbled by it. So what are you doing to seek support for yourself? Very, very important that way. And then internally, I think, Abraham Lincoln said this. If anybody's seen Lincoln lately, anybody see that movie? We went last week, my wife and my son. Abraham Lincoln said, I've been driven so many times to my knees by the overwhelming conviction I had nowhere else to go. So when you think about what he dealt with, right? And you try everything else, and then you just kind of say, hey, help me out up there. The other side of this, now listen, when you seek support, sometimes we got to kind of distance ourselves from people. You know any of those people? You love them, but man. You know what I'm talking about? So there's this woman that went in to get her hair cut, right? And her stylist was not there. She knew she was going to be, but she was going to Italy, and she said, I got to get a haircut. So she goes in, and she gets this other stylist. And the stylist comes over, and she's nice enough, and she says, oh yeah, I'm going to do your hair. Mary, your stylist told me, and I know what to do. And the woman looks up, and she says, well, I really want to, I want to get a good thing here. I need to get a good haircut, cut color, and all that kind of stuff. I'm going to Italy. And this woman says, Italy? Oh my gosh, why would you go there? I mean, it's so crowded and dirty. And the woman said, and the flights are just, I don't know why you're going to Italy. And the woman's looking up, and she's like, well, yeah, I know it's a long flight, but it's across the ocean. She, I know. And the woman looks up, and she says, yeah, but the hotel we're staying at is really beautiful. I saw it online. The pictures are awesome. The woman's got her. Oh, those pictures on the internet, it's horrible. You go to these hotels. They look so big. They look so new. They look so... My husband and I went on a trip, and it was so small. It was dirty, the pictures with the pictures. And the woman's sitting there going, ah. And she said, but really, I'm going to see the Pope. Is why I'm going. And the woman looks down, and she says, yeah, you and 2 million other people. You'll see the Pope from 2 miles away. He'll be this little white speck in the distance, and you go ahead, have fun. So the woman just pays her and gives her a little tip because she just felt sorry for her. She walks out and said, oh my gosh. About 5 weeks later, 6 weeks, what's the time I'm cutting color, ladies? My sister's giving me 3 weeks back. And she would know. So anyhow, about 3 weeks, 5 weeks, whatever, depends. This woman comes back in, and she goes now to her regular stylist, and the other one just saunters over and says, well, how was Italy? And the woman looks up and she says, it was pretty good. My flight, my friend that I went with had extra points, and I got bumped up to first class. I mean, I took a nap. I had a wonderful meal with like real silverware. I had a beautiful glass of red wine. And the woman's going, oh, okay. And I guess the hotel was good. She says, you're not going to believe it. They had just done a $40 million renovation. I was the first one to stay in my room after the renovation. The windows opened up. It looked out on a plaza. There was a bakery underneath with smells. It was just unbelievable. And the other woman's going, all right. And I guess you saw the Pope. You know how they just keep coming at you? And she says, well, as a matter of fact, I did. I had an audience with the Pope. That's the Pope. Right on time. So she said, I had an audience with the Pope. And she said, oh, you had an audience with the Pope? She said, yeah, as a matter of fact, my girlfriend and I are walking along the street, and a priest comes up and says, are you here to see the Pope? Where'd you come from? We talked, we said, from Philadelphia. Oh, well, what I do is I go out and I just find people who came to see the Pope, and he'd like to have an audience with him. He really likes just to meet people who came to see him. So the woman's going, okay, so you flew over first class, you had the hotel, now you met the Pope. And what did the Pope say to you? And the woman's sitting there and she says, I knelt down and I took His Holiness's ring and I kissed his hand. And he put his hand on my shoulder and he said, bless you, my child. Where did you get that lousy haircut? So, seek support. You got good jokes for these holiday parties now, don't you? Listen, seek support. Seek support, but sometimes we gotta kind of just back off. We can still love people, but watch sometimes. You can't save the universe sometimes, right? We try to save everybody, we can still just pray for them from a distance. The other side of this is to be support. Very important, and this comes, to be support, and sometimes, the wonderful work that you do when you give clothes and all this kind of stuff. Last night I was blessed to be with a young girl in Wilmington, Delaware, 9 years old, leukemia. 7-year-old little brother jumping off the chairs at me and all, mom and dad there. And hopefully she's going to Disney World in June. She's going to stay at a place called Give Kids the World. It's just designed for children fighting with sickness. So I do work with Make-A-Wish. And here's the best in terms of being support. Here's probably the best experience that I carry with me and I'll share with you. A couple of years ago, I was working for MBNA, a credit card company. I was doing Make-A-Wish. And there was a young boy from downstate Delaware, 12 years old. He had cancer of his lower leg. Had a twin brother, a younger sister. His dad had an accident, so his mom, the dad was a little impacted after the accident, so a little dysfunction going on there, and he was not around. So we went down. This kid was a great basketball player. Little thin kid. I mean, he could shoot. I'd go down there, and I played a little bit. So we're playing. I mean, I won one game out of like 90. I said, "What do you want to do? You want to go to Florida? You want to go here?" I'm trying to distract him, and he just keeps training. So the wish that we determined for him, or that he determined really, was going to be a shopping spree. Now here's how it works in Make-A-Wish. You get $150 for every age that you are every year. So you do the math, 150 times 12, 1,800. I think my accounting degree paying off a little bit. And then my wish granter and I, we went over and we got some more money. We went to the mall and said, hey, we're going to bring in a special kid right now. You want to give some more money, gift certificates or anything like this. Long story short, this kid had about $2,300 in his pocket to spend. So Saturday rolls around, they pick the family up in a limousine, mom, brother, son, this guy, and daughter. And I'm driving behind my Ford F-150, Joe probably remembers it. Because I had to, he had $2,300, we're going to have a lot of gifts, they might not fit in the limo. And his first gift was what? A new basketball pole. So he said, we're going to get one. So our first stop was Dick's Sporting Goods store down on Route 202 there in Delaware. So we go in and we're all ready to go, and the manager's there, and we go back and we're looking at these baskets, the gorilla baskets, like $800, $1,000 back then, collapsible rim and all that. And he goes, and he's moving around and he's looking, all right, cool. He's over here looking at these ones that are like $89, are going to blow over in a rainstorm. The backboard is as big as a trash can lid. And I'm going, no. And he's going, ah. In the meantime, he brought his brother a pair of sneakers. He bought his sister a pair of sneakers. And I'm like, what? And he said, let me just go look again. So I'm thinking, what is going on here? So I go over to his mom. His mom's a real kind of feeble little lady just dealing with her own stuff.